if most business plans actually worked, then many entrepreneurs would not be going through what they're going through. And they wouldn't be failing. The business failure rate wouldn't be going up high, because many business owners do business plans in order to get money, funding, all types of things, right? So then the question is, why are business owners failing if they've created business plans? I'm here to let you know, it's not because you didn't plan correctly. It's because you haven't truly planned what matters. Okay? So in today's video, we're going to talk about why most business plans don't work and what you need to do instead. How's that? All right? How's that? So let us jump right into it. Let's start with, what is a business plan? Shall we start there? So a business plan, in simple terms, are the who, the what, the where, the when, and the how of your business, right? You are looking at who you're serving, what you're doing for them, where you're located, how you plan to grow the business, and you're just mapping out your plans. Why you're doing this, the passion behind it. That's pretty much, in a nutshell, what a business plan is. But here is the thing. Whoever created the idea of the business plan, well-intentioned, because truthfully, if you don't plan to fail, then you fail to plan, makes total sense. Here's the problem. Number one, business plans were built for banks. They were not built for the battlefield of business. So what do I mean by that? Okay? They were literally built so that you can get funding, that somebody will believe in your dream and vision enough to fund you, to support you, to be there, and help you build the business, right? So people literally plan out their business plans. How many of us have done that? Put it in the chat. Let me know. How many of us have built out our business plans to go get funding for them? Because that's what we're told to do with them here today, right? So we talk about the who, we talk about the what, we talk about the where, we talk about the how, we talk about the why, so that people can buy into our vision and they go ahead and invest. However, what are investors looking for? Investors, lenders, they're looking for a return. When you get money from the bank and you're loaned resources, they're looking for not just what they lent you, but a return on it, hence the interest. Or investors are like, what's my return on investment if I go ahead and invest in you, right? So that is what they're looking for. So because that's what they're looking for, that is how business plans are, they're created for their audience. And all you're trying to do is show them strategically how they're going to get their return back. Well, and this is why I always say business plans are guesses, okay? They truly are guesses. Because the truth of the matter is, you can make up any story you choose. If we were to build a business right now and say, okay, we're going to build a cookie stand. I'm just making it up. So we have our cookie stand and we talk about who we're going to serve. Well, we're going to serve children, because children love cookies. Children love cookies, so we're going to serve children. And then that's the who. How are we going to serve them? We're going to serve them from a stand. Okay? We're going to serve them from a stand. That is how we're going to do it. We're going to serve them from a stand. All right, that's the who, that's the how. What are we serving? I forgot to put the cookies down. We're serving cookies. We're selling cookies. All right, so that's the what, that's the who, that's the where, it's in the stand. Why are we doing this? Because it makes children happy, and when children are happy, society is happier because their parents are happy, and the parents will spend more money. whatever the case may be. You create that. You're making this up, by the way. You're making this up, by the way. And then someone looks over your business plan and says, you know, children don't really have a lot of resources, so maybe you need to really sell to the children's parents. So you're like, okay, you sell to the children's parents, but you also make the children really want them. So you create this plan, okay? This vision of your business plan. This is our business plan, okay? And you're doing the who, the what, the where, the how, okay? You're answering all those questions. The investors look at this and then they ask for projections. They say, okay, how many cookies will you have to sell to be profitable for us to get our money back? Okay, so you say I need to sell 1 million cookies in order to get the money back. All right, so now you're like, I'm selling 1 million cookies, okay? Well, okay, where are you going to get the cookies from and all this thing? So you go through the business plan. It's fine. The investors see it. They say, we believe you'll be able to sell 1 million cookies in the United States of America. We believe in your projection that you just made up, because you made it up, okay? That you just made up, and we're going to go from there. We'll loan you the money. Let me tell you the problem with that. Are you ready? I was at an event that had investors and small business startups. And I was just observing what was going on in the event. And I was sitting at a table where there was clearly a small business owner next to me who had borrowed some investors' money. Well, they got investor money. And guess what they were complaining about? As the event was going on, as the organization was talking about how much money, investor money they have poured into startups and all the things, guess what she was mumbling next to me? She said, yeah, I got investor money, but guess what? It ran out. Now what do I do? Because I didn't hit my goals yet, and the money ran out. How do I continue? So this is the problem with the business plans, because any investor will tell you that they invest money in multiple businesses and they only expect a percentage, a very small percentage of them to actually make it. But when they make it big, then they recoup all the funds for all the other businesses that didn't make it. And then, so they gamble on which one will be the best. Every investor will tell you that. Why? Because these business plans, they really don't work. They're great to convey your vision and what you plan to do and like all the grandiose ideas, but they're truly guesses at best. So business plans were built for banks. They were built for investors, but they weren't built for the battlefield. That lady sitting next to me, she was in a battlefield. She was like, the money ran out, something she didn't plan for, definitely wasn't on her business plan. And now what do I do? Okay, so that is the problem with traditional business plans. And that's why, unfortunately, they don't work. Now, here's another reason that these business plans don't work. Okay, they don't work because they ignore you. What do you mean? What do you mean they ignore me? Well, how many of us have ever been in a situation where we have the greatest intentions? The greatest intentions. We are like, so let's go back to our cookie stand, okay? Our greatest intention is to sell 1 million cookies. Greatest intention, all right? And we believe we're going to wake up every morning at 6 a.m. and we are going to work from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. because we're a startup and we can pull these hours and get things together in order to sell these cookies. All right? How many of us have ever had a plan and a grandiose idea? I know this is true because whenever the new year starts, we say we're going to go to the gym. We're going to wake up early. We're going to work out. I know that's how we are. Okay, fine. So we have these grandiose plans. Guess what we are not accounting for? Life. Lives. Type in a comment if you know that lives. Okay? Because lives sometimes. And you might have all the intentions in the world to wake up at 6 a.m. every morning. But guess what? Some things may happen and you wake up at 8. Or something happens with your child and you realize, guess what? You're going to be away from 9 to 6 p.m. because of some situation your child got you in. Okay? Lives. And so because business plans do not account for your actual life and what happens in your life, and that random things come into your life, your day-to-day, your lifestyle, your actual values, can it be sustained by you? Because that is not a thing that business plans account for, they fail. They fail. Because as much as you plan out how you're going to do things, you also need room for when life happens. So that's another reason business plans fail, okay? And then I want to give you the third reason that business plans fail, and they fail us. They don't account for real life changes. We're making it back up again. Okay, you are at your cookie stand. Okay, you decided to sell to the children's parents. All right, but what if some random news flash comes across the screen that says, "Parents, beware of cookies. It is causing some detrimental disease in children." What's going to happen to the parent's behavior? Whether or not the child wants it, what's going to happen? The parents are going to be like, I'm not buying cookies anymore. That's what's going to happen. That is a market shift. Okay? That causes a problem with your whole plan. And business plans are static and businesses are dynamic. Okay? Businesses have to shift and change with the market, with what's going on in society. Business plans are still there. Business plans told the bank, you're selling 1 million cookies no matter what. The business plan doesn't have any, well, this could be a situation. The business plan just says, we need to give the bank back their money with return. We need to have a return on investment for our investors. So when, going back to that young lady, when life was lifing and the market was, shifting and things were happening and she ran out of money, then what? The business plan, how does it help her? So the business plan as is just not effective. It's just not effective for what we are attempting to do when it comes to building out your business. So, you know me. I like to always use scripture to truly exemplify what it is that I am referring to and what we're talking about when it comes to a business plan. Okay? So, here it comes. Let me get us up here. All right. Business plan. One of my favorite stories to pull from is Joseph. Okay? I love the story of Joseph. All right. So with Joseph had a plan for his life. Not because he created it, but God gave it to him, right? When Joseph was young, he had a dream that pretty much the interpretation was that his family were going to, at one point in their lives, bow down to them. He had a whole dream about, stars bowing down and sheaves bowing down. And so the interpretation, his family was just like, oh, really? You think we're just going to bow down to you? And let me tell you, it did not bode well with him and his brothers. His brothers weren't having it. They didn't like it. But that was his dream. His dream was that at some point in his life, the family was going to bow down to him. He may not have understood it fully, but that was the dream. That was the plan on his life. That was the vision. That's all he knew. All right? So let me tell you what happens with plans. Joseph thought it was a great idea because this is his plan to share it with everyone. All right? And because he shared it with everyone, it caused some discord. It caused some discord with his brothers. Okay? Discord with his brothers. All right? So much so that when his father sent him over to his brothers just to give them food because they were out tending to the sheep, his brothers decided to throw him in a pit. All right? So Joseph was now in the pit, threw him in a pit, and then eventually sell him into slavery. Okay? So that is what happened to Joseph. Now, here's the thing about business plans. His plan is, folk are going to be bound down to me. How is that going to work if I'm now in a pit and I'm sold to slavery? What do we do with the plan? When things don't work out, the plan is obsolete. There's nothing we can do. We're like, this is not working. No one bowed. No one did it. I'm now in a pit. I got sold to slavery. And now he's in a foreign land. He's in Egypt. He's in a foreign land, confused, bewildered, all the type of things. Okay? So that is, the plan is done. That's how we operate. The plan is done. The money ran out. I'm in the valley. What we were doing isn't working. So then what? Let me tell you what we tend to do when we're in this situation. We start going on YouTube University, listening to different gurus, and we start duct taping strategies and ideas to what? Get out of the pit, right? Or run away from the slavery, right? Right? Or escape from Egypt in order to get back to our plan. That's what happens. I just want to make sure that y'all are with me with this, okay? That's what we like to do. We duct tape strategies together. We rearrange things trying to figure out how to get back to the plan, which was that the family was going to bow down somehow, some way, I don't know, right? So that is what we try to do. However, does it work? No, because Joseph is still in Egypt as a slave with Potiphar, okay? It won't work, right? Then, to make matters worse, Joseph, literally, from Egypt, Potiphar's wife is upset with her and upset with him and all that kind of stuff because he rejected her. And now he's in jail. Seems like he's going further and further away from the plan. This doesn't match. The plan isn't planning. The plan isn't matching. Things aren't going on. So what do we call that? Business failure. You're in jail. The business isn't working. It failed. All the things. The plan doesn't work. And then we usually, at this point, we just throw it out, start something new. Try another business option. Try something else because it failed. That is what tends to happen when you're relying on just a business plan. And when you're using funding, a business plan that's really meant for investors and all that to guide your business decisions. It just doesn't work. Okay? I want all of us to understand that. All right? Now, here is where we can pivot. This is what I want us to recognize. Because there are things that you can do when a business plan fails you. Let us look from the perspective now of Joseph's life of God, okay? Because Joseph had the plan, but God had the blueprint. Let's talk about the blueprint, okay? Let's talk about God's blueprint in all of this. All right, so he had Joseph. Joseph was gonna, his family was gonna bow down to him and all the things. All right, so knowing Joseph, Joseph blabs to his brothers, okay? And his brothers, they're unhappy. They're upset. They're like, whatever, Joseph. So what do? They put Joseph in the pit, okay? Now, because they put Joseph in the pit, they were like, that's not good enough. We need to now sell him into slavery. No problem. Sold him into slavery into Egypt. No problem. At Egypt. Let's put Egypt here. Here's what's crazy. When God has a blueprint of what's going to happen, the pit and the selling into slavery still works within the blueprint. Okay? So what needs to happen now? Joseph, instead of being, the favored son, has to pivot. He knows I need to pivot. He's like, what helped me in my father's house is not going to help me here. So here, I have to pivot what I need to do. I'm probably going to have to do some servitude behavior, clean some floors, organize people's, tables. I'm still going to pivot in how I'm going to serve and what I'm going to do. Okay? I'm going to pivot. I'm not the same. I have to be different. No problem. So now in doing that and using different strategies, he gains the like of Potiphar and starts running Potiphar's house. Now he's at the top of Potiphar's house. Why? Because his mindset, everything pivoted. It pivoted because he's like, I'm not where my father is. And yet there is still a plan that they're going to bow down to me, but I need to make it through this. How can the plan come to fruition if I give up here? All right. So he changes his strategies. He becomes, no problem, I'll clean the floors, I'll organize things out. Potiphar was just like, you're so trustworthy, I can trust you with everything. No problem. But then Potiphar's wife gets all up in the mix, and she causes mayhem and madness and causes Joseph to now have to go to jail. Another loss, you would say. Another loss. But no, Joseph is like, nope. I've been there before in business. I'll do it again. Same strategies. All right. I'll become trustworthy. I'll serve really well. Everybody that actually is in the prison house, I will serve them. I will help them. I will, whatever the case may be, whatever is needed. And guess what happened? The keeper of the prison let Joseph run the prison house. The same thing happened. He became the top at Potiphar's house. Now he's the top in the jail cell. Now he's the top. He's the one running the prison. That's really interesting when a prisoner is running the prison. But anyway, either way. And what did he do? He served. Same strategy he used to get to the top here, he used here because he said, look, I have to survive if the plan is going to work. Okay. So what did he do here? Do we know the story? He served the butler and the baker. How did he serve them? Well, they had dreams. They were struggling with it. Joseph interprets the dream. He knew that the butler was going back to Pharaoh's house, okay? But the baker was going to lose his life. So he told the interpretation of the dream, and it happened. And he said to the butler, I'm in here for no reason. When you get to Pharaoh's house, when you go back to Pharaoh, please tell him about me because I'm just in here and I have no business being in here. Butler's like, no problem. Butler forgets, okay? Butler forgets for about 2 years. Butler forgets. Again, Joseph could be like, oh, woe is me. He's like, no, there's a plan. My family's going to bow down to me somehow. So I need to continue to serve. Continue to do what I know I'm supposed to do in this season. Continue to work on this thing. Continue to become who I need to become. Continue all the things. Then God, at the appointed time, because see, God has the blueprint. God has the blueprint. God, at the appointed time, gives Pharaoh a crazy dream. That dream that he could not answer, wise men couldn't answer, no one could answer. The butler was like, wait a second. There's a guy, a Hebrew in the jail that interpreted my dream and it came to pass, interpreted the baker's dream and it came to pass. You need to use him. What happened? Now, because Pharaoh had a dream that God brought, mind you, okay? Joseph was able to leave jail. This is Joseph leaving jail. He was able to leave jail and work with Pharaoh. Now, one would say, well, Kawana, what do you, like, how are we talking about blueprints here? Let's talk about this really quick. God understood, because of a blueprint, because when you have a blueprint for your business, there's certain things you understand. Number one, Pharaoh of Egypt could care less about talking to any Hebrew. They didn't even match. And that is shown later on in scripture when Joseph's family joins them in Egypt. And Joseph was like, look, they don't really have high respects for shepherds and everything. So just say that that's your occupation. We're going to put you in a different place in Goshen. And the scriptures reveal it. But the idea is that in order for Joseph to be used in Egypt, he had to go through this way. He had to go through this. In going through this, he was going to learn the customs. He was going to learn all the things that he needed in order to serve Pharaoh. Now here's what's crazy. He's serving Pharaoh because of that 14-year project that he got serving under Pharaoh, and he's second in command to in Egypt, second in command. Guess what happens? There's a famine in the land. Joseph is the one giving food. So there's a famine, and Joseph is the one giving food. And it says that Joseph fed the world, which included the world, which that means everywhere in the world that needed food came to Joseph. What does that include? His family. Do you see that? But because he is second in command of Egypt, what does his family come and do? They bow. Comes full circle. Comes full circle because God was relying on a blueprint, even though Joseph only had the plan. But Joseph, knowing that there's a blueprint, was faithful at each area in order to get there. That is the difference between just a plan and a blueprint. And I'm here to just explain to you that many businesses, what they really need is not a plan. They need a blueprint. So let me explain how deep this goes, okay? Because you know, how many of you know I love a great case study? Love a good case study. Let me tell you, love a good case study. Because my thing is, you know, a lot of us, we like to say, oh, what's in the Bible is just in the Bible. No, these are practical things that help us. And I love me a good case study. So here's the case study we're going to talk about today. We're gonna use Netflix. Man, y'all, let me spell this properly. Okay, we're gonna use Netflix. Okay, here we go. Netflix. We're gonna use Netflix. Let's talk about Netflix really quick. When Netflix began, Netflix was literally, what they tested in their very, very beginnings was just if they can mail a DVD in the mail, just in the mail, like with an envelope, okay? And here's what's crazy. They were doing this when DVDs first came out. okay? They first came out with the DVDs. So they're testing this DVD technology. And literally they took an envelope, threw a DVD in there, sent it through the mail, and it got to the destination uncracked. So they decided to start Netflix. They were like, we're just going to ship this out, okay? As they're shipping it out, guess what happens? Guess what happens, y'all? There are market changes. Market shifts and changes. What kind of market changes? Well, some years down the road, what started to happen were people were, the industry was changing now into more streaming. They were deciding to stream more, okay? So DVDs were slowly shifting. And let me tell you, if you're at the beginning of the market shift, oh, you have momentum, okay? So Netflix didn't stick to just their plan of DVDs. They said, well, let's also do some streaming. Let's play around with that technology. Let's see how that works with streaming. That's what they started to do. Here is where it gets crazy. How many of us remember Blockbuster? How many of us remember Blockbuster? Blockbuster was the giant then. Okay? Netflix was this little Peasley Weasley startup company, whatever. Blockbuster, billions. Netflix, mere millions. Okay? Blockbuster decided, oh, Netflix, this little fly on me, and I see what they're trying to do with this internet streaming and all the other things. We're pretty good. And long story short, because I don't want to get into all the nitty gritty, Blockbuster decided they're not going to shift with the market, and they still did their, VHS? Let me get this right for all of my fellow folk that understand. They still stayed with their VHS and then they switched over to DVDs, right? But they did not, they decided not to do the streaming yet. Streaming, they were like, whatever. Not yet. Okay? What happened? The market shifted. Netflix started streaming. By the time Blockbuster figured out what was going on, Netflix had already gotten huge. And guess what was happening to Blockbuster? It was going down. Down the tubes. How many of us see Blockbuster today? Where is Blockbuster today? We don't see Blockbuster today. Who do we see? We see Netflix. Why am I bringing this up? Because with a business plan, there's a certain way that things have to be. But when you have a blueprint, you can shift with it. You can foresee what's coming and pivot. Netflix pivoted. When the technology started to pivot, Blockbuster wanted to stay in its ways. It would be too much to pivot. It would be, I don't know. They had other reasons, and they had different operational changes with people being shifted out of place and new people coming in and all kinds of things. But they didn't pivot, and they didn't pivot quickly. They just stuck to it. When you have a blueprint, you are literally able to see, like, what did I say? Plans don't account for real-time changes. You're literally able to see what's coming and pivot to stay afloat. Because blueprints are just as dynamic as a business is. Here's the other thing about blueprints. You ready for it? I'm going to go back up to Joseph really quick. The blueprint that God had already brought into consideration Joseph's values and how he was. Because he understood already that Joseph would decide to be faithful here and then make it to Pharaoh and be long-suffering through all the ups and downs of everything, he was like, this will work. Because God already knew that the brothers were going to feel some type of way, and they may, they may show some harm or whatever. Well, guess what? Then I can use the fact that the brothers threw him in the pit, sold him to slavery for my own cause, right? Netflix said, because the market is going to shift, then we can pivot into streaming. Let me tell you what Blockbuster didn't do. You're talking about understanding the operator and the lifestyle. The CEO of Blockbuster at the time wanted to do the shift, wanted to do streaming. I just want to explain this to you. They wanted to do the streaming. And they started down that path because they started to understand that the shift was here and the shift was coming. However, the investors, the stakeholders who wanted their money out, didn't want to give that CEO their bonus because they wanted their return now. They didn't want to. So the CEO was like, okay, well, I'm gone then. You don't want to pay me my bonus? I'm leaving. So they hired another person who did not want to pivot, who just decided to do some retail hoodies and all that kind of stuff because he was a retail person. So that's what he brought to the table. And guess what? Blockbuster kaputs. Kaputs! And that's the thing about going back to what's built for the bank or built for investors. Investors are great. They really can help you. Absolutely. However, we have to understand that we who are building the business, we have our plans, our visions, and we have to be careful that we put ourselves in the proper perspective to be able to actually run the thing and it bring a return. However, if all you're focused on is the investors and what they're pulling out and it can easily tank a business plan, right? It can tank a business plan. Because now you have to go to the investors and say, we're pivoting here, we're changing this, and you may need a delay on your return on investment. Why? Because markets are dynamic. Life is dynamic. Things are dynamic. How can you do that in a responsible way? I'll tell you right now, you need a business blueprint. Am I making that big? Big enough for you to see? A business blueprint is what's needed. That is what's needed. A business plan is not going to cut it in today's fast-moving society. It's not going to cut it for your life. Because let me tell you, if you have to stick to that constant plan, do you know what that leads out to? Burnout. You will be burnt out. You will be burnt out trying to keep something that's static when your business in itself is dynamic. When you're not able to pivot during your pit moments, your slavery in Egypt moments, your jail moments, if you can't pivot because you don't have a dynamic blueprint to work with, you're going to be stuck. You're going to quit. You're going to end it. You're going to fail the business. And that's what it is. So, how many of us understand and really needs to understand? You really need to understand it, but how many of us agree? You need a business blueprint. Blueprints are where they at. Blueprints are dynamic. If the market shifts, you can see it. If things happen in your life, you can foresee what's to come. I'm here to tell you that when Joseph was managing that 14-year project, guess what he was using? When Joseph was managing that 14-year project, guess what he was using? Joseph was using a blueprint. How did he know to use a blueprint? Because God showed him that's how I do things, with a blueprint. And that's what you need. You need a blueprint. It's dynamic. All right? So, here's my blessing to you all. I want you to know that if you're in a static moment, if you're in a rough issue in your business and your plans are not adding up, duct taping strategies together is not going to work. Duct taping different business models, trying to make it work, is not going to work. The only thing that can truly guide you and navigate you through all the ups and downs of your business is a blueprint. That's it. And that is what you need to dial in on. And of course, if you have any questions, well, Kawana, help me with the blueprint. Help me all that kind of stuff. I need to understand this blueprint. How do I, let me know. Put it in the comments, okay? DM me, find me. And we can start talking about that. But that's what you need. And that way, you still get your freedom, you're not burnt out, and your business can thrive, even through the down moments. Sounds good? Well, it was wonderful spending this time with you. And until next time, have a good one. Bye-bye.